Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, episode 334, What to Say and What Not to Say to a New Widow.
Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, the only podcast that offers a proven process to help you work through your grief, to grow, evolve, and create a future you can truly look forward to. Here's your host, Master Certified Life Coach, Grief Expert, Widow, and Mom, Krista St-Germain.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the podcast. If you are a new widow, or maybe a not-so-new widow, take a listen to this episode and then share it with the people who care about supporting you. It may not capture everything that you want them to know, but my hope is that it's a great jumping-off point to start some conversation, to clear up some myths about grief, to help you feel more supported and help the people who care about you feel a little less awkward. If you're listening because someone you care about has recently lost their partner and become a widow, maybe you found this episode yourself, maybe they sent it to you. Either way, I'm glad you're here. You want to help. You might be afraid of saying the wrong thing, making things worse. Maybe you've already said something that you wish you could take back. You're not alone. If I had a nickel for everything I have said that now makes me want to cringe, as they say, I would have a lot of nickels. Most people genuinely want to support their widowed friend or their widowed family member, and they just weren't taught how. So if that's you, I don't want you to feel bad about it. I just want to help. And because I work with widows every day, because I am a widow myself and I have lived it, I want to help you understand the kinds of things that actually do help and the kinds of things that actually don't. Not because there is a perfect formula, but because it will help. So in this episode, I'm going to share a few key things people don't always understand about grief or maybe get wrong, some things not to say, some things to say, and generally how to be a safe person for the widow in your life. So let's get into it. Some things people don't understand about grief. Before we talk about what to say or what to do, I want to start with one of the biggest myths. And sometimes when I go and I speak, I ask people, who's heard of the 5 stages of grief? And all the hands go up, almost anyway. Then when I ask, who's heard of any other grief theory besides the 5 stages of grief? Almost no hands go up. So if that's you, don't worry. This isn't going to be a lesson in grief theory. If 5 stages of grief is familiar to you, you understand that there's a concept out there called the 5 stages of grief. You've probably heard them at least one time in your life: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Those are the 5 stages. What I want you to know is that that work, very important work in its day, the late 1960s, came from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. What most people don't realize about the 5 stages of grief is that that work was not about people who were grieving. That work was actually about people who were dying, people who were coming to terms with a terminal diagnosis. And so her intention was never to say that people who were grieving would do so in 5 neat and predictable, tidy stages. She never meant to say that denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance were the only things people would experience. She was just noticing that those were common experiences people were having during the dying process. And so she created this 5 stages. And then later, after her book called On Death and Dying, she wrote a book called On Grief and Grieving, along with David Kessler. Over time, this important idea got very much oversimplified and became a formula that people have misused and sometimes use against themselves and others. And so unfortunately, sometimes people now think that grief is something that we move on from, that we get over. We're just going to get to this magical place called acceptance eventually, and then we will feel better. And that's not how it works. So I want you to understand that going into this conversation about what to say and what not to say. Not because you need to understand all the other grief theories that currently exist, but because that one sets us up for saying a lot of the wrong things. So what do you need to know? You need to know that grief is not linear, that it's very personal, that it comes in waves, that it's very messy, that my favorite definition of grief is that it's a natural human response to a perceived loss, which means there isn't a finish line that your widowed friend is going to reach. So Our response to that loss will definitely change over time, and we will always have a response. So in this way, grief doesn't end. We aren't trying to move past it. Our best hope, and what I work with my clients on, is that we integrate it, that we decide what we want to make of what has happened, who we want to be, given that it has happened, and how we want to live, given that this is our life experience. This is what we've gone through. And as much as we want there to be a formula, there isn't. So, good to know, right? Intense emotion is also part of grief. And most of us are socialized to believe that the point of life is to be happy. So when we see someone who isn't happy, it makes so much sense that we would start to think something is wrong, that we would perceive a wrong that needs to be righted. And we have that reflex, that righting reflex, that this person, something is wrong, it needs to be fixed, we need to right this wrong. And that's often when we will say things that are on the do not say list. Count your blessings. At least he's in a better place. Everything happens for a reason. At least he's no longer in pain. It was all part of God's plan. At least you had them for the years that you did. Don't worry, you're young. You'll find someone else, right? These things that usually come from good intentions, but they're often received as hurtful, dismissive, and under them is this implication that grief is a problem to fix. But grief is not a problem to fix. It's an experience that we want to allow. It's something that we want to be able to navigate. And I think those things really matter. And if we can keep them in mind, then it becomes much easier to discern what to say and what not to say, which I'll give you very specifics here in a minute. The other thing I really want you to know about your widow friend is that grief is a full body experience. And that's something that a lot of people are caught off guard by, and your widow friend might be quite caught off guard by this as well. I know I certainly was. Grief isn't just emotional. We think of it as an emotional experience. It's a very physical experience. Mary Frances O'Connor, who is a grief researcher, that's probably a great oversimplification of her title, but she's written a couple of really powerful books, one called The Grieving Brain, another called The Grieving Body, helps us really understand that grief is a full body experience. When someone we love dies, especially in a partner scenario, the brain is expecting to find them, trying very hard to find them. It searches constantly for cues of their presence, scanning the environment to find them, right? Their voice, their footsteps, their smell. When it doesn't find them, it doesn't make sense to our brain. Just doesn't make sense. In order to meet our attachment needs, our brain has encoded the who, what, when, and where of our person, where we will find them, when we will see them, how far away from us are they. And their absence literally does not make sense to the human brain. As a result of that, a huge part of grief is relearning, is the brain slowly rewiring its understanding of reality. It is usually predicting for our attachment needs where our person is. How long will it take us to get to them? Imagine if we didn't believe we knew those things on a regular basis. That would be very difficult to be in a relationship with someone we cared about if we were constantly worried about if they were okay and where we would see them and how long it would take for us to find them. But then they die. And then all of our brain's old predictions don't match reality anymore, right? Our brain imagines that they should be in this place that they aren't. And the garage door comes up and we know intellectually that they died, but yet our brain assumes it's them. So it takes time for our brain to catch up to the new data, the new reality, and learn that new reality so that it can start making accurate predictions again. And that is not just emotional work, it's physical work. It takes time and it's tiresome. And so we want to keep that in mind, that this whole grieving process, not only is the brain doing all kinds of work it's not used to doing, so is the body, right? So our heart rate can change, our stress hormones rise, we have higher inflammation, our immune system takes a hit, sleep, digestion, all disrupted. Body and nervous system are trying to reestablish safety in a world that suddenly feels very unsafe. And this means that your widow friend might be way more exhausted than even she expects to be. Her concentration, her memory, her decision-making might feel very off and foreign to her. She might be the type of person who never forgot anything, always on top of the details, and all of a sudden can't remember the basic things, is canceling plans, seems unpredictable, says yes, she wants to go to something, and then finds herself exhausted and backs out at the last second. And what I want you to hear is that has nothing to do with who she is or how much she cares or what she values. I want you to know that her brain and her body are doing the hard work of grief, and it's quite exhausting. So if and when you notice that happening, I want you to remember, don't make it mean anything about her. It's just that grief is a full body experience. And when you understand that, that changes how you show up and the types of things that you say and the types of things that you don't say. I wish I had known these things before my husband died. I'm glad that you will now know these things to support your widowed friend. And frankly, at some point, if you haven't had a significant loss in your life yet, you will, because it's a part of being human. And most of us don't get out of this human experience without having that happen. I hope that it will better prepare you for what is normal in grief and just often not talked about. So let's talk about what not to say and then what to say and what doesn't help and what does. So a few things for you here. The number one thing that doesn't help is when we're trying to fix it. When we say things that try to make it better, does not work. In fact, it usually backfires. You really cannot make it better. And what I mean by that is you cannot take the pain away. The pain is supposed to be there. It is a part of the loss. When we love someone and we lose them and it feels like a loss to us, pain is the byproduct of that. And we need to be able to feel it, right? And let it flow through. So for you, even though you love her, to come along and try to fix it or make it better will probably feel dismissive to her, and it will probably not land as the way that you intend for it to land. So again, a lot of those things that I said earlier, they're in a better place. At least you're young. At least they're no longer suffering. At least you knew what love was like. Count your blessings. At least you had the time that you did have. Those things are all fix it kinds of things. We can't fix it. It is what it is. It is grief. It's supposed to be painful. It sucks and it's hard and it's painful, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Number 2, things that don't help. It doesn't help to avoid saying something because you don't know what to say. To a grieving person, silence can be interpreted as abandonment. So even if you're afraid of saying the wrong thing, saying something, even if that something is, I don't know what to say, but I'm thinking of you. I don't know what to say, but I love you. I'm here, is typically better received than silence. So say something. Number 3, avoid centering your own discomfort. So yes, of course, no one taught us this, right? We didn't have a class in this growing up about what to say to people in grief. So of course we come to this experience and we feel awkward about it. But saying things like, I can't imagine what you're going through, or I wouldn't survive if that happened to me, or, oh, this is my worst nightmare, shifts the focus back to you. And again, while your intention is probably not to dismiss what's happening for them, sometimes that's how it's received. So instead of centering your own discomfort and how you imagine this would impact you or how it is impacting you, see if you can bring your conversation back to what's going on for them. Number 4, don't state your assumptions about what's happening for them or about what you think will happen for them in the future. You probably don't like someone assuming what's going on for you, and you probably don't like to be told that someone else knows what's going to happen in your future when they don't. And so as you can imagine, of course, widows don't either, right? This makes sense. And how that might show up is that you might be telling them how strong they are. I hear this so many times. People do not like to be told how strong they are, especially when they don't feel strong. She does not feel like she has a choice to go through what she's going through. She didn't ask for this. She just feels like she's putting one foot in front of the other and she's doing the things that needs to be done and she's surviving it. And you might perceive that as strength, and we could even argue that it is. But because it doesn't usually line up with how she would describe her own internal experience, then when you say it, it's like being told what your internal experience is instead of being asked what your internal experience is. And the same thing is true for predicting someone's future. You might be inclined to believe, oh my gosh, Of course, if she wants to be in another relationship, she's not going to have a problem with that at all because she's a catch and I love her and she's amazing. And so, of course, you're going to find someone else someday. Of course. But that might not be what she wants. Chances are what she wants is she wants her person back. She doesn't want the idea of another person in the future because right now, what her heart really wants is she wants her person back. So, who knows what she'll want in the future? But telling someone what will happen to them in the future just may not land. It may not be what they imagine themselves wanting. It may not be what they're currently wanting. And while, again, you're just trying to make her feel an emotion that is higher on the emotional scale than sadness or despair, it's not usually going to be received in the way that you want. Also, there are no shoulds in grief. There is no way that we should be feeling or shouldn't be feeling. There is nothing that we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And so keep that in mind so that you don't tell your widowed friend what she should be feeling or doing. If we've got this idea that there's 5 stages and we've got to go through them in some linear fashion and we've got to be angry and then we've got to bargain and then we've got to go through denial, right? Then that's where people think, oh, I think you're in the anger phase, right? I think either that or maybe you need to be more angry. We hear things like that. We say things like that. No. Sometimes people have a lot of anger. Sometimes they don't. But it's not a right and it's not a wrong. So avoid telling anyone what they should be doing or should be feeling. You might be listening to this and thinking, wow, Krista, I would never do that. And I'm still saying it anyway because I hear these stories all the time. So I don't want to make anybody feel bad if they have said it. And I also just want you to know the kinds of things that sometimes widows do hear, even if you would not say that. Coming back to telling them how they feel or what's going on for them, making assumptions about what's going on for them, what might happen in the future. What widows typically need most is permission to be and feel exactly what they're feeling. And to have someone who will be with them in that is very helpful without needing to predict the future or provide any sort of certainty because life is uncertain. One more on the don't list and then we'll switch to the do list. Don't expect yourself to handle it perfectly or say it perfectly. You and I both know perfection is not a thing. It's not real. It's not a standard we want to strive for. You're going to say awkward things. You're going to look back and cringe. You're going to stick your foot in your mouth. I've done it. You're going to do it. We all do it. That's just a part of being human. Please be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Do not expect perfection. Sometimes perfection is what makes us freeze and not say anything. Sometimes perfection is what makes us say the thing and then not say anything again because we're so busy beating ourselves up for what we actually did say. All right? So no perfection. What actually helps? What do we want to say? First, let's acknowledge the loss instead of avoiding it. And again, perfect words are not necessary. This sucks, and I love you. I wish I knew what to say. I wish words could make this better. I'm just so very sorry, and I'm here with you, and I love you. Acknowledge the loss. I know that it is easy to think, they seem to be doing so fine. They don't look like they're thinking about it. I don't want to make them think about it. I don't want to upset them. But the thing is, reminding them that their person died by acknowledging the loss instead of avoiding it doesn't actually remind them that their person died. I promise you, they did not forget. They did not forget. Acknowledging it reminds them you didn't forget. And that helps them feel less alone. That is what most widows will tell you they want, is to feel less alone in their grief. They don't want you to talk them into feeling happy. They want to know that they're not alone in how they feel, and that's very different. Secondly, say their person's name. It's one of the most comforting things that you can do. Talk about them. Tell stories about them. Ask about them. It is surprisingly comforting to most widows. And again, I don't want to speak for all of them, but most widows like to have their person talked about, especially in the early days. I went to a Christmas party last year in my neighborhood, and I met a neighbor that I had never met before, and she told me that her husband had recently passed. And so I just said, "Tell me about him. What was he like?" You could just tell how much her face changed. She loved telling me about him. And she just went on and on about what he loved and who he was and what he was like and what he was interested in. And all I did was just ask her to tell me about him. And I didn't even know him. And things like that make a big difference. Third, of what to say. When you offer help, offer specific help. So let me know if you need anything. Sounds great. Sounds nice. I'm just a text away. Also, sounds great. Sounds nice. But it puts the burden on the widow to ask, and very often she won't. Sometimes it's because she's worried she's going to be a burden. Sometimes it's because nothing makes sense in her world right now, and she doesn't even know what to ask for. Time is weird. Her brain is weird. Her body is weird. Her whole reality is just flipped upside down and does not make sense, even if it looks like she's navigating it quite well. And so sometimes it's just hard to know what to even ask for. So when you can offer specific help, that might sound like, "Hey, I'm going to the store. What can I grab for you?" Or, "I'm free on Thursday night. Can I bring you dinner?" Or, "Would your kids want to come over Saturday night and have a movie night with my kids so that you can rest?" Right? We're offering very specific ways to help. Now, that might not land with your widow friend, and she may say no, but offer specific help and see what happens. It also might jog some ideas for her of areas that she could use help with. I remember I was so grateful when some of my friends just offered to do very specific things that were not on my mind. So my husband died a little bit before back to school time, and school supplies, I definitely was not thinking about school supplies. And so one of my friends whose children went to the same school got the school supplies for me. Huge help to me, but I wouldn't have thought to ask. Number 4, what to say. Keep speaking up. Keep saying it. Grief does not end after the memorial service, after the casseroles, after the cards and the flowers. Obviously, grief doesn't ever end. But it's what it feels like sometimes when you're a new widow, is that you're surrounded by all of these people and they're telling you how much they care about you and you feel the love. And then there's this silence where everyone goes back to normal and they go back to their own lives. And you are kind of walking around realizing that, oh, this is my life now. This is real. This isn't just a dream that I'm going to wake up from. They're not on a business trip that they're going to come back from. And that's sometimes when loneliness hits the hardest, when the reality of it hits the hardest. So yes, surround her in those early days. And don't stop there. Keep speaking up. Keep showing up. Mark your calendar to check on her again in whatever increments you want. Next week, next month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. Even random check-ins without expectation of return. Hey, just thinking of you, just wishing you a good day, just wondering how you're doing, just wondering if you need anything, right? Small check-ins, random check-ins, as time unfolds, can make such a huge difference. It matters so much less what you say and so much more that you say something. Don't beat yourself up if you haven't been saying anything. Don't weaponize this against yourself, please. But think, okay, how could I keep speaking up? How could I keep showing up for this person? Okay, 2 more. Number 5, match their energy. Some days they're going to want to talk. Some days they're not. Some days they might want to be alone. Some days, even if you are there, they might just want quiet company. Match their energy. Follow their lead. If you're not sure, feel free to ask. And don't take it personally. What's going on inside of her is what's going on inside of her. And it has so much less to do with you than your brain will want to tell you that it does. So match her energy. And finally, respect their choices. Not that you intentionally wouldn't, but sometimes it sounds like you don't. When you say things like, you should date. I think it's time for you to date again. You ready to get back on the horse? Or, oh, it's too soon to date, right? When you're pressuring one way or the other, if they bring up considering selling the house and you try to talk them out of it, or if they tell you that they want to stay in this house forever and you try to talk them into selling it, they're giving you one choice and you're telling them to do something else or pushing them. If you are questioning them about why they are wearing the ring or why they aren't wearing the ring or why they aren't moving on or why they are making choices that you might label as moving on, right? This idea that if there's a choice to make, that they shouldn't make a big choice in the first year. I mean, that would be nice if that was the world we lived in, but big decisions do need to be made sometimes within the first year. And it's kind of like being a human. We have to be adults sometimes. So there's no universal timeline in grief. There's no right or wrong. And what is right for her might not be what is right for you. What is right for her might also not be what was right for her in the last chapter of her life. What is right for her in this next chapter of her life might be different than what you're used to. So this is your opportunity to respect her individuality and her choices for herself and her choices for her kids. Sometimes, by the way, she might feel some pressure to parent the way that her person wanted her to parent or would have parented. She might be feeling some pressure to run the business that they started together or keep the dream alive that was his dream and not hers. And that might not be the choice she wants to make. She might be putting a lot of pressure on herself to keep making that choice. And that's a whole different deal. But you can help her by not putting any pressure on her to make particular choices, even if it's what her person would have wanted or what the old her would have wanted. Respect her choices. Let her be her own person. Let her change her mind about what she wants and what's going to be important to her in this next chapter of life. In particular, for widows, it is like, for some, a record scratch moment where you're going through the motions of life and you're doing all the things that society taught you to do and adulting and parenting and making the money and just doing all the to-dos. And you're doing those things and you're doing them pretty well. And then this happens and they lose their person. And it's like the record just scratches and comes to a halt for her. And she's now looking around her life and she begins to take an inventory of the way that she is living and the choices that she's been making and who she's been being, what she's been tolerating, how she's been using her time, who she's been giving to and maybe not receiving from. She's noticing who is in her corner that she thought would be in her corner, and she's noticing who she thought was going to be in her corner that couldn't handle it and ghosted. And she's really just considering, if life can be this short and this precious, am I living it the way that I want to be living it? And in many ways, the answer might be yes, and in many ways, the answer might be no. But for most widows, there is an inventorying that happens, intentionally or not. And they start seeing disconnects between what they value and how they're living, who they want to be and how they are being. And it is that inventory that often drives changes in the kinds of choices that she will begin to make that you might not be prepared for or understand. But kudos to her. Kudos to her for inventorying what matters to her, for coming eventually back into touch with what she values and the life she wants to live and how she wants to live it, and making sure that she's doing that. And if that requires changes, being changes with relationships, sometimes it's faith changes, sometimes it's job changes, sometimes it's physical changes, sometimes it's Where do I live? What do I do for a living? Right? Growth can come after grief because she notices that there's something not quite how she wants it to be. And now she feels that that is more important than it has felt before. And here we go. And that can be hard to watch when it's not what you expected or maybe what you wanted for her. I want to offer it's an opportunity to be her champion and be along with her and let her grow and evolve into the next version of herself that she wants to be, because sometimes spousal loss and huge grief is the impetus for that. I think it's a beautiful thing, but I also understand that it can feel very unfamiliar and scary if you're used to loving a version of her and now she doesn't seem to want to be exactly the way you're used to seeing her. Lastly, what I want to talk about is how to be a safe person. Being a safe person isn't just what you say. It's how safe people feel with you. Now, you cannot make someone feel safe with you. So I acknowledge that. But you can definitely think about who you feel safe around and why. You can think about what feels safe to me and can I be that for someone else? You can give it your best shot. And you think about, what does a safe person say and not say? What do they do and not do? A safe person is less likely to judge or rush you. A safe person can sit with you no matter how you're feeling without trying to change you. They accept you and whatever it is that you're feeling. A safe person can allow silence without needing to fill it. A safe person is a person who doesn't need you to feel better so that they can feel better. And I want to say that again because it is at the core of what we're talking about in this podcast episode. A safe person doesn't need you to feel better so that they can feel better. So many of the things that we say in grief that are received as dismissive or insensitive or out of touch are because we, the person saying the thing, do not know how to be okay when that person that we care about does not seem to be okay. And so we say things because we need them to feel better so that we can feel better. And we have all done this. I have never talked to a person who hasn't done this, myself included, more times than I can count. And this is one of the biggest things that I had to learn as a grief coach, is I've got to be okay no matter how you feel. I can't put conditions on you feeling okay so I can feel okay. And you can do that for another person too, even if you're not trying to be a grief coach. Right? You're just trying to be a safe person who can be with them in this human experience. And so that might mean that you might need to learn and practice tolerating your own discomfort so that we're not trying to solve for it by saying creepy things to people. It can totally be done. You can 100% do it. It might mean learning new nervous system tools. How do I calm my own nervous system so that I can stay regulated even if they are dysregulated? Which I have other tools and resources for that. We're not going to get into that in this episode. It might mean that you have to switch gears and you might be more used to a relationship with this person where you're doing a lot more talking and what they might need from you is a lot more listening than you're used to. And that might be new and different. And sometimes what can really help is to take a breath before you offer any advice or say anything and just ask yourself, am I about to say this to help them feel better or to make me feel better? And you wouldn't be wrong if you were trying to make yourself better. I don't want you to hear this as me trying to shame you or blame you or make you feel bad. Not at all. So human of us. So human of us to want to say things to make other people feel better so that we can feel better. But that's just a good question to ask yourself as a filter. So you can stop yourself from saying the thing that really was about ultimately making you feel better. Again, not about being perfect. That's not a standard we want to try to achieve. It's not realistic. It's not human. This is about being present with someone's humanity, with the raw, tender, ugly, hard side of life sometimes. And when you can be present for your widowed friend, you are telling her, you're not alone. You don't have to pretend. You don't need to feel better so I can feel better. You are safe with me to feel how you feel. And that is the kind of support most widows will tell you truly helps. That is the kind of support they would love to receive. So, if you remember nothing else from today, remember this. Your job is not to make your widowed friend feel better. Your job is to be with them no matter how they feel. Grief is not something that we need to fix. It's a natural human response to a perceived loss. It is something we need to feel. It is something we need to allow. It's unique to the person. It's unique to the relationship. It is not time-bound. Time alone doesn't do the work. We do not move on from it. We learn to live with it, to integrate it, to make meaning from it, to decide who we want to be in it. So you can just forget all those outdated things you learned about grief. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. You clearly care about the person who sent it to you. My hope is that this will be the beginning of a more supportive and more honest conversation and interactions to come with your widowed friend. So now that you've listened, don't be afraid to tell the widow in your life that you did. And if you're curious about something that I said, or you wonder how she feels about something that I said, it's okay to ask. Ask her if she'd like to talk about it. She'd probably love to know that you listened and that you cared enough to ask some questions. That's what I have for you this week. Remember, I love you. You've got this. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and want to create a future you can truly get excited about even after the loss of your spouse, I invite you to join my Mom Goes On coaching program. It's small group coaching just for widowed moms like you, where I'll help you figure out what's holding you back and give you the tools and support you need so you can move forward with confidence. Please don't settle for a new normal that's less than what you deserve. Go to coachingwithkrista.com and click Work With Me for details and next steps. I can't wait to meet you.